Number 10. The death of Dane Phillips. In 2011, a 50-year-old family man named Dane Phillips found himself caught in the middle of a dispute between his son, Cody, and some of his old high school classmates. Cody allegedly posted a rude comment on Facebook about an acquaintance of his dad, Daniel McRae. McRae was pretty upset about the comment and confronted Cody, but he was unsatisfied with the outcome of the discussion. The following night, Dane Phillips met up with the men who were mad at his son in hopes of peacefully resolving the issue. Little did he know, McRae was out for revenge, and he had recruited help from some of his ties to the motorcycle gangs. Instead of putting the disagreement to rest, the group beat Phillips with hammers and baseball bats. They left him on the roadside in a pool of blood, and he died later that night at the hospital. 7 people were charged with manslaughter. At least 2 of them were full-patch members of Hells Angels motorcycle gang. Another one of the attackers was the president of another gang called the Throttle Lockers, which acts as a support group for the Hells Angels. Phillips was a family man with no criminal record and had unknowingly gotten involved with the wrong people in his efforts to act as a peacemaker. Number 9. Berkshire triple murder. One day in August 2011, 3 men were seen leaving a Hells Angels party in Pittsfield, Massachusetts together. The trio, which included Hells Angels member Adam Lee Hall, kidnapped, stabbed, and shot 3 people. They then dismembered and buried the bodies. The victims were David Glazer, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell. The men killed Glazer because he was planning to testify against Hall in an assault case, and they murdered the other 2 victims to eliminate witnesses. After committing the crime, the group went to the local Hells Angels clubhouse, where they bragged about the brutal killings. The victims were reported missing a few days later, and soon enough, police dug up their remains. All signs pointed toward Hall as a guilty party, and the witnesses identified as accomplices. The investigation led authorities to one of the suspects' homes, where they found hatchets, knives, a machete, and other tools they believe were used for hacking the victims' bodies into pieces. Hal and his accomplices, David Chalou, and self-proclaimed Satanist and vampire, Caius Viovis, were found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. They are all serving life sentences without the possibility of parole. Number 8. Biker Brawl. When 25-year-old David Martinez moved a traffic cone outside the Hells Angels clubhouse in New York City's East Village one day in 2016, it upset club member Anthony Lovanetti. The cone was in place to mark a reserved spot for a biker, and Martinez allegedly moved it so that a car his friend was driving could squeeze past the taxi. Lovanetti reportedly worked as a security guard at the clubhouse and was on patrol that day. He rushed out to the street and confronted Martinez. Soon enough, the disagreement came to blows, and Lovanetti shot Martinez in the stomach. The bullet was lodged into the victim's spine, and he was hospitalized, but luckily survived the attack. Martinez identified Lovanetti as the shooter in surveillance footage of the incident. Police charged the suspect with first-degree assault and possession. His defense lawyer claimed that Martinez was the aggressor in the argument that led to the shooting. The judge held Lovanetti on $25,000 bail, which he posted shortly after his arraignment. But the case was dropped after the 52-year-old suspect died of an aneurysm. Martinez forgave Lovanetti for shooting him, telling the New York Post that he extended his condolences to the biker's family and friends, and that he wished blessings on the Hells Angels. Number 7. The 2007 Melbourne CBD shootings. Christopher Hudson became a full member of the Hells Angels in 2007 after defecting from a rival motorcycle club the year earlier. While drinking heavily and high on drugs at a strip club in Melbourne, Australia's central business district, he beat a dancer unconscious and left her in the street. When Hudson's girlfriend came to pick him up, he showed her that he had a gun and forced her to walk with him. He reportedly told her, "Today, you're gonna die. Today's the last day of your life." She managed to escape Hudson on foot and tried to get into a taxi, but Hudson pulled her out of the car by her hair. 2 bystanders, a lawyer named Brendan Kellier and a Dutch backpacker named Paul de Ward, noticed the chaos and approached the pair to ask what's going on. Hudson drew his gun and shot both men and his girlfriend. Brendan Kellier died at the scene. Hudson's girlfriend lost a kidney and spent several days in a coma, and de Ward suffered from injuries that required extensive rehabilitation. Hudson fled the scene and dumped his gun and jacket at a construction site, then sought refuge at a Hells Angels clubhouse. He surrendered to the police without incident 3 days later and was charged with a slew of crimes, including murder, attempted murder, intentionally causing serious injury, and unlawful imprisonment. Hudson pleaded guilty to his girlfriend's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 35 years before becoming eligible for parole. Number 6. Rival Revenge. Francisco Rosado was the leader of the Bronx chapter of the Pagans Motorcycle Club. a rival organization of Hell's Angels. Authorities consider the Pagans to be an outlaw club. While he was working at his day job as the super of an apartment building, a Jeep Cherokee approached. Three masked individuals got out and opened fire in broad daylight, shooting Rosado in the head, neck, and arm. He died at the scene. Another member of the Pagans, who was with Rosado at the time, was shot in the arm as well. At first, investigators were at a loss to explain the trio's motive for killing Rosado. They charged two Hells Angels members, Frank Loose Cannon Tatuli and Sayanan Thongdawath, with attempted murder, manslaughter, and assault. Police also arrested a member of the Satan Soldiers motorcycle club named Anthony DeStefano and charged him with conspiracy of manslaughter. It eventually came to light that the suspects committed the shooting in retaliation for shots fired outside a local Hells Angels club months earlier, although there was damage to the building and no injuries were reported. What would your nickname be if you were in a motorcycle club? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Rolling Thunder and Big Smoke. Late last year, a police investigation into alleged drug trafficking among biker clubs led to the disruption of an $18 million operation in Delta, British Columbia. The joint projects, codenamed Project Rolling Thunder and Project Big Smoke, arose after locals expressed concern over drug activity in the area. Initially, the investigation focused on street-level drug dealing, and it ultimately led police to bigger fish. Detectives connected the operation to the Hells Angels and UN motorcycle clubs. As part of Project Rolling Thunder, they seized $193,000 in cash, $70,000 worth of jewelry, assault rifles and other guns, and several vehicles, including ATVs and Harley-Davidsons. Some of the vehicles had hidden compartments. They also found a huge drug stash. Authorities believe that the operation was capable of yielding $18 million in sales every year from cannabis alone. The value of the dried cannabis was estimated to be around $1.8 million. Operation Big Smoke, which focused on the illegal pot, led investigators to believe that the facility was operating under a false medical marijuana license. Delta Police Investigations Bureau Superintendent Kelly Young told the press that Rolling Thunder and Big Smoke produced enough information for authorities to continue investigating the area's drug activity, and it appears that the projects are, indeed, ongoing because there haven't been any updates since news of the busts originally broke in November of last year. Number 4. Delayed Justice. In 2012, a group of 8 armed suspects had unexpectedly stormed into a paint and panel shop in Adelaide, Australia, and shot Australian business owner Jason DeLesso to death. The investigation hit a standstill, and the 8 suspects were only recently charged for the nearly decade-old murder. While DeLesso had no known gang connections, his death was believed to be related to an ongoing feud between the Hells Angels and Fink's bike gangs. Authorities believe that the killing resulted from a case of mistaken identity and that DeLesso was murdered as revenge for the firebombing of a home belonging to 3 of the killer's parents. All 8 suspects pleaded not guilty to murder. Their trial is ongoing. Number 3. A repeat offender. In 2019, Joseph Lancia, the head of the Rhode Island Hells Angels chapter, allegedly fired a gun at a vehicle being driven by Richard Starnino, a former prospect to join the club. The two were reportedly embroiled in an ongoing feud. The incident, which happened outside of a local Hells Angels clubhouse, was captured on surveillance footage. Police arrested Lancia, and he was released on a $100,000 bail. He claimed that the victim was an informant who pointed a gun at him first and argued that the authorities were trying to entrap him. While awaiting trial, the 30-year-old found himself in hot water yet again. This time, he was involved in an altercation at a strip club, where several Hells Angels members were seen arguing with security guards and managers. Police found the assistant manager bleeding after he got punched in the face. He fell unconscious and went to the hospital for his injuries, but said he didn't want to press charges. Officers took Lancia into custody on the suspicion that he had committed the assault, and he served 2 months for violating his bail agreement. He is currently on trial for 9 charges related to both incidents, including felony assault and battery, disorderly conduct, assault with intent to commit murder, carrying a pistol without a permit, and more. Lancia recently rejected a plea deal offer that would sentence him to 5 years in prison. It's the second offer he's refused, after first being given the opportunity to do 8 years. His case will go to trial, and he faces up to 61 years in prison if convicted on all 9 counts. Number 2. A smuggling slip-up. In 2015, Australian expat Luke Joshua Cook, his partner Kanyarat Wadafatak, and an American expat Tyler Gerard tried to smuggle a half-ton of methamphetamine into Thailand on a yacht. They were transporting the $300 million shipment for the Hells Angels through their illicit boat importation business. After picking up the drugs from a Chinese vessel, the trio's yacht was approached by a Thai Navy vessel. They dumped the stash overboard, and it washed ashore. Locals found it and turned it over to the authorities, who were unable to link the drugs to any suspects. They eventually arrested Cook, Wedefatak, and Gerard. Prosecutors claimed that the Hells Angels paid Cook $10 million to move the shipment, but Cook's lawyer argued that he was framed for the crime. He was sentenced to death and appealed, but the court didn't believe in a frame job and upheld the sentence. Cook and Wedefatak were finally acquitted by a Supreme Court after a drawn-out legal battle over the credibility of a witness and a lack of evidence linking them to the drugs. He returned to Australia and was reunited with his 2 children after quarantining for 2 weeks. And number 1, reformed and regretful. Ben Geppert became a criminal during his teens and eventually became a member of Hells Angels on Australia's Gold Coast. But he learned the hard way that the lifestyle is not all it's cracked up to be. Geppert had made headlines several times in recent years and spent much of his adult life in and out of jail. During a 2019 trip with his ex-girlfriend, Instagram model Elena Vader, he allegedly became violent when behind the wheel. Fearing for her safety, Vader jumped out of the moving vehicle to escape Geppert. Police had to tase him 3 times in order to subdue him, and he was sentenced to 6 months in jail for the incident. That same year, Geppert's 17-year-old brother, Harrison, was stabbed to death. Ben had introduced his siblings to the gangster lifestyle and felt responsible for his death. In an emotional Instagram post, he vowed to make sure that the person who killed Harrison paid for their actions. He also left the Hells Angels. Earlier this year, the notorious ex-biker starred in a video for a Queensland government program aimed at reforming gang members and preventing young people from joining gangs. In it, Geppert discussed how being a gangster ruined his life, taking his brother from him, and made it difficult for him to find a normal job. A few months before the video first aired, he was arrested for a violent burglary he committed over a drug debt. Then, Geppert got in trouble for violating a restraining order by calling his ex-girlfriend multiple times from jail. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for his most recent crimes and will soon be eligible for parole. Geppert has a reputation for posting too much of his gang-related business on Instagram, and it reportedly earned him a target on his back. The judge who imposed the punishment said that she would normally hand down a longer sentence, but because Geppert would likely spend most of his sentence in isolation, which wouldn't help him become reformed, she went somewhat easy on him.
Number 10. From YouTube to jail. Mona Lisa Perez shot and killed her boyfriend while pregnant with her second child, but she didn't do it on purpose. Well, actually, she did shoot him on purpose. She just didn't think he would die. It all happened during a botched stunt that the couple wanted to post on YouTube. The 20-year-old mother from Minnesota blasted Pedro Ruiz III, her serious boyfriend, straight in his chest. Immediately after the shooting, Mona Lisa called the police and told them what happened. According to her, Pedro had asked her to shoot him with a .50 caliber Desert Eagle pistol while he was holding an encyclopedia against his chest. The bullet was supposed to get stuck in the encyclopedia. They'd post the video online and get thousands of subscribers, and then they would make millions of dollars on YouTube. After all, isn't that what the American dream is all about? The things people do for views. The couple set up a pair of cameras for the stunt. Their 3-year-old daughter was also in the room watching. Mona Lisa fired the gun, but the bullet went straight through the encyclopedia and killed her boyfriend. She was looking at 10 years in prison for murder, but is expected to serve just 6 months in jail for the stunt. Her diminished sentence comes from the fact that she hadn't meant to kill him, and also that it was Pedro's own idea for her to do it. But still, she has consequences. She'll be on supervised probation for 10 years. She's not allowed to own a gun, and she can't make any money resulting from the video of the deadly stunt gone wrong. Number 9. Failed Houdini. A failed Houdini was discovered handcuffed to a tree in Russia after a botched magic trick. And here's the deal, his skeleton was found 2 years after he went missing. 2 whole years. His name was Ivan Klucharev, just 30 years old when he was last seen in May of 2017. He vanished 80 miles, 129 kilometers from Moscow, in the remote region of Shatura. And even though there was an extensive search for Ivan, authorities just couldn't find him. But before we get into what happened, let's take a brief look at who Ivan was. He was infamous amongst his friends for being an avid hiker and a Harry Houdini enthusiast. He loved magic tricks. He loved survival. And it appears that he tried to put both of them together. He hiked out into the middle of the wilderness and tried to recreate one of Harry Houdini's most famous escapes, getting himself out of a pair of handcuffs. Sadly for Ivan, he couldn't pull it off. He died in the forest, all alone, except for the camera pointing at him. When Ivan was discovered, nothing was left but a skeleton and a pair of loose handcuffs around his wrists and secured to a tree. There was a tent nearby, 5 more sets of handcuffs, 3 metal chains, a book on how to do knots, and a small assortment of padlocks. There also happened to be a camera pointing directly at Ivan's skeleton. It looks like he was trying to record the escape, which he undoubtedly would have posted on YouTube. Number 8. Timbo the Redneck. You may know Timothy Hall as Timbo the Redneck, an online personality who was based out of Florida. Timothy Hall got famous by uploading videos of redneck antics, things like cruising around in a pickup truck in the small town of Jennings. In fact, that pretty much sums up every video he ever made, just booting around town in his truck with his friends. But to spice things up a bit, Timothy decided to do a dangerous stunt with his beloved pickup truck. The stunt took place in the front yard of his friend's house. He and his girlfriend were in his pickup doing donuts, spinning around faster and faster. But pickup trucks aren't exactly designed for donuts. They don't tend to stick in a tight circle like a little car can. Timothy flipped his truck over. He flew out the window as it flipped, and the truck landed directly on him. He was literally crushed to death by the very pickup truck that helped make him famous online. At the time of his death, he was only 18 years old. His mother uploaded a TikTok video to thank all his fans. His friends took to YouTube to describe his brutal death and let everyone know that there will be no more videos from Timbo the Redneck. Number 7. Passing out in Times Square. Here's a YouTube stunt that's sure to make everyone a little upset. A man was arrested for pretending to pass out inside his vehicle in the middle of Times Square, New York City. According to the police, the man faked having a medical emergency, sitting slumped against the steering wheel with the car horn blaring. Naturally, the people in Times Square were worried that this guy had an accident. He was backing up traffic, people were freaking out, and it became a very serious situation. A police officer even smashed out his window. But in reality, there was no accident. The YouTuber, identified as Zishan Soroya, had placed a hidden camera in the car to record the entire affair, just so that he could post what happened on YouTube. He was eventually pulled out of the car. He didn't tell the first responders that he was doing it for a video, and they treated him like they would anyone else. The real trouble came once the police figured out that it was all fake. They arrested him on charges of making a false report and obstructing governmental administration. The NYPD commissioner tweeted about the incident, saying that it was a very dangerous stunt that caused first responders to be away from other New Yorkers who actually needed them. Plus, the stunt was so reckless and kind of annoying that Zishan may have ruined his YouTube career before it even started. Some things are funny, and some things just rub people the wrong way. How does this stunt make you feel? Should someone abusing emergency services just to collect subscribers be punished? And if so, how? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Parachute Fail. A 29-year-old man was filming a stunt for his YouTube channel when he had a major malfunction with his parachute. His name was Ruben Carbonell from Spain, and his stunt was about as dangerous as it gets. He and a friend broke into a cement factory and then jumped off the top of the building. They did it in San Vicente del Raspeig at about 1 o'clock in the morning. Ruben jumped off the roof first, expecting his parachute to open and carry him gently to the ground while he recorded the whole thing for his followers. But his parachute didn't work. The thing just refused to open, and so Ruben literally jumped off the top of the building and fell 150 feet to his grisly death on the concrete below. He probably didn't feel much, since his brains basically exploded upon impact. Ruben's YouTube channel was all about extreme sports. He had all kinds of other videos already posted on his channel, with him jumping from bridges, other decrepit buildings, and all kinds of risky places. He mainly parachuted and paraglided, and until now, he had no problems. But as we can plainly see, it only takes one mistake to wind up dead. Number 5. Freezing in a lake. A popular YouTuber in Norway has died at the young age of 57. His death came as a complete shock to his fans, and indeed, probably to the YouTuber himself. One second, he was filming himself ice skating on a frozen lake. The next, he was dead. His name was Tor Eckhoff, known by his fans as Apator. He was a factory worker in the daytime and an amateur content creator by night. He mostly uploaded YouTube videos of himself frolicking in the ice and snow, traveling to different parts of Norway and hanging with the local wildlife. On November 26th, he ventured out onto the frozen water of Jacob's Dam to do some ice skating. But within just minutes, he ended up beneath the ice in the freezing cold water. And even though the Norwegian man was used to these kinds of temperatures and had swum in freezing cold water before, he couldn't make it back to the surface this time. He had to be rescued by divers, and by then it was too late. The paramedics couldn't bring him back to life. They sent him by air ambulance to the nearest hospital, and the next day, he was taken off the life support machines and pronounced dead. Number 4. Gender reveal plane crash. In 2021, gender reveal parties are often just excuses to make the wildest and most insane YouTube videos for a quick 15 minutes of fame. The more outlandish and dramatic the reveal, the more attention you're gonna get online. But this has caused a bunch of different freak accidents, including a recent plane crash in Mexico. The gender reveal party was taking place in Cancun. On March 30th, 2021, a Cessna 206 airplane left Holbox Island carrying 4 people. The plane was on its way to Cancun with a small stopover in Playa del Carmen to refuel. At 3:54, the plane flew near Cancun's hotel zone. It was here that the plane was to release either blue or pink smoke to show the gender of the baby. Family members were on a yacht with their phones out, recording what should have been a momentous moment for the expectant couple. Pink smoke spat out of the plane. It was a baby girl. But then disaster struck. The pink smoke streamed from the back of the plane, and seconds later, the plane nosedived into the water and crashed. Both the pilot and co-pilot were killed instantly. Only one of their bodies was recovered from the water, and authorities still have no idea what exactly happened. We only know that it almost certainly had something to do with all that pink smoke billowing out of the back. And even though the stunt backfired, the video of the accident still gets plenty of online views. Number 3. Roundabout of death. A couple of really awful teenagers were trying to recreate a video they saw on YouTube when a young boy was left with potential brain damage and his eyes bulging out of his head. The boy, 11-year-old Tyler Broom, was discovered unconscious near an English playground after a group of teens convinced him to sit in the middle of a roundabout. Once Tyler was in the roundabout, they spun it at extremely high speed using the back wheel of a motorcycle. The intense force of spinning caused Tyler to black out and go unconscious, yet the teenagers continued revving the engine and spinning the roundabout. There was so much G-force that fluid and blood was forced into Tyler's skull, threatening to cause irreversible damage to his brain while pushing his eyes out of their sockets. This was honestly one of the most brutal cases of YouTube recreation gone wrong in recent memory. The poor kid didn't even know the teenagers who convinced him to take part in their stunt. When it was clear he needed medical attention, they took off running instead of helping him. Tyler had such extreme injuries that he looked like an alien, with hospital staff barely knowing what to do with him. Last we heard, Tyler was still in the hospital with doctors waiting to see if the swelling in his brain would go down. He was under constant threat of having a stroke, and nobody had any idea how long it would take for his injuries to heal. And finally, to make things even worse, the police haven't been able to track down the group of teenagers that did this to this kid. Number 2. Losing both legs. Arkady Askanov was 11 years old when he decided that he needed to be a YouTube star. To propel himself to stardom, he thought it would be a good idea to train surf in what was supposed to be his first viral video. Sadly for this young boy, the train surfing stunt went terribly wrong, and he fell off a moving cargo train in Russia. The wheels then ran over him, literally slicing off both his legs. He was completely cut in half, with everything below his buttocks removed by the train's wheels. But the tragedy doesn't stop there. Arkady was with a group of boys who allegedly helped pressure him into doing the dangerous stunt. When he fell and got run over, all the boys he had been with ran away and left him for dead. That's what his mother, Maria Petrova told local news. The real miracle here is that the boy survived at all. It was the driver of the train who stopped his engine and got out to give him emergency first aid and call for paramedics. He survived the most brutal thing imaginable, literally being torn in half, and now has the rest of his life to plot his next dangerous stunt. Number 1. Rope Swing Daredevil. Kyle Lee Stocking was trying to recreate a popular stunt that he saw on YouTube when he fell to his death. He was trying to use climbing ropes to jump off a cliff in Utah and then swing beneath the Corona Arch. The arch is about 140 feet tall, not exactly your playground swing set. Kyle was inspired to try the dangerous stunt after seeing a video of climbers flying beneath the arch on a rope, a video that got over 17 million views. But Kyle was an amateur. He had no business trying something so dangerous. According to what local Sheriff Lieutenant Kim Neal said, Kyle miscalculated the length of the rope needed for the swing. He jumped off the cliff, thinking he would easily sail between the arches like in the YouTube video, but he actually smacked into the ground instead and was killed instantly. Number 7. Manifesto of Murder. Friends of John Brian Altinger became suspicious when the 38-year-old did not return from a date he had been bragging on endlessly about in April of 2011. Their suspicions turned into increasing worry when Altinger sent them all a series of emails stating that his date had decided to take him on an extended vacation to Costa Rica. Altinger also sent in a letter of resignation to the oil field where he worked as an equipment manager. No forwarding address was given for his final paycheck, and the email sent to his friends could not be responded to. Police in Alberta, Canada were notified, and an investigation was launched into Altinger's possible disappearance. When friends broke into the man's condominium, they found his passport and dirty dishes, giving no evidence of Altinger going out of Canada anytime soon. Law enforcement began looking into the mysterious woman Altinger was supposedly going on a date with. The woman was an attractive younger woman Altinger had interacted with on Plenty of Fish. No evidence tied Altinger's disappearance with Mark Twitchell, but the filmmaker indicted himself when he claimed Altinger had sold him his car the night before. Had he not gone to the police, they probably would have never known about Twitchell. Twitchell now became a suspect, and several incriminating evidences led police to book him for the suspected murder of Altinger. While in custody, police discovered a manifesto on Twitchell's laptop titled SK Confessions, or Serial Killer Confessions. The file had been deleted, but was retrieved from Twitchell's computer. The manifesto detailed the harrowing incident. Twitchell pretended to be a woman on dating sites to lure unsuspecting men to his garage. Once there, he would bludgeon them to death and then stab them repeatedly before dismembering their bodies and disposing of them in the woods. Police believe that Altinger was Twitchell's first victim, but a first attempt had been made some months prior, with the victim managing to escape. Twitchell had graduated from the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology with a degree in radio and television arts. The man had directed and written several fan-based movies, including several Star Wars adaptations. He also harbored an uncanny obsession with popular television serial-killing vigilante Dexter Morgan. For the murder of John Brian Altinger, Mark Twitchell was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Number 6. Body Parts. Ingrid Lynn was a 40-year-old nurse residing in Seattle, Washington. The mother of 3 had been in an online relationship with homeless day laborer John Charlton for close to a month before the two decided to meet up for their first date. The date was supposed to take place at the Seattle Mariners game on the evening of April 8th in 2016. The day after, on April 9th, Lynn's ex-husband arrived at her home with their 3 daughters. After several hours of waiting with no response, the ex-husband called Lynn's mother, who arrived with a spare key. Lynn was nowhere to be found, and there was blood, human tissue, and a 15-inch saw in her bathroom. Lynn's mother immediately tried to contact Charlton before calling emergency services. Police arrived at the scene and began their investigation. While the chances of Lynn being alive were slim, they were reduced to none after a homeowner placed a call to local law enforcement to report that a severed head had been found in the recycle bin. The severed head, arm, foot, and leg belonged to Ingrid Lynn. On April 9, 2016, police arrested Charlton on the suspicion of Lynn's murder. Nearly a week later, several other body parts, presumably belonging to Lynn, were found scattered throughout the area. Charlton initially pleaded not guilty to the charges. He claimed that the couple had gone to the game as planned, returned to Lynn's home, and the next thing Charlton knew was that he was on the sidewalk, passed out, and with multiple cuts to his face. The man tried claiming insanity as a defense, but eventually pled guilty to all charges. For the murder of Ingrid Lynn, John Charlton was sentenced to 27 years and 9 months in prison for a case of homicidal violence. Number 5. First date and last date. Stephen Fabby was a suspect in the disappearance of Leanne Swanson, a 45-year-old Michigan native. Swanson had been reported missing by her family after she failed to return home following a night out November 16th in 2012 with Fabby. However, before police had a chance to speak to Fabby, the 30-year-old man shot himself to death at his home on North Fox Road, 30 feet from where Fabby had shot himself. Police found Swanson's lifeless body in the neighbor's wooded property. An investigation was launched by the Midland County Sheriff's Department, but it didn't take long to tie Fabby to the murder of Swanson. However, with no witnesses, victims, or culprits, no motive could ever be established for the apparent murder-suicide. According to Swanson's mother, the two had met online and are planning on going out for their first date on November 16th. Her mother reportedly felt uneasy about the idea of her meeting Fabby, but Swanson reassured her. Swanson even called her once she reached the planned destination to let her know that nothing was off. 2 days later, Swanson's mother received a phone call from her daughter stating that she was on her way back home. That was the last contact she had with Swanson. After she didn't return home by November 20th, Swanson's family lodged a missing persons report with the Midland County Sheriff's Department. While on their way to question Fabby about his date's whereabouts, police heard a gunshot from the residence. They called out for whoever was inside to come out, and a man emerged holding a phone with a 911 dispatch on the line stating that his son had just shot himself. Stephen Fabby's Facebook profile revealed a disturbing insight into his life. He claimed that he was retarded, alone, and a wicked nice guy. The two had met on a popular dating site, Meet Me. What's the worst first date you ever had? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 4. Too pushy. Family members last saw Ashley Pegram as she was leaving for a date on April 3rd in 2015. The 28-year-old single mother of 3 told family members that she would be back either later that day or the next morning. The next time her family saw her was when they were called in over a month later to identify a badly decomposed body police had found in a shallow grave in the woods. Police suspected the body belonged to Pegram. It did. During her month-long disappearance, police zeroed in on her date that night, Edward Bonilla, as the prime suspect. The 30-year-old was initially charged with obstruction of justice when Pegram's blood was found in his van and around his home. He gave the police this story. Bonilla and Pegram had reportedly been in contact since March of 2015, but had decided to go on their first date in April. According to Bonilla, they went to his brother's house for a party, where Pegram began drinking heavily. On the ride back, Pegram said she had to use the restroom. Bonilla pulled over to let her out and claims he accidentally hit her with his car. On accident. Getting hit by the car made Pegram mad, and he said she started kicking his vehicle. The two started arguing. Bonilla claimed that tensions had been high all evening since Pegram believed Bonilla stole her mother's phone. After she started kicking his car, Bonilla placed her in a chokehold, which is how he believes she died. Bonilla said in his testimony that he tried to hide the body out of panic. At first, he just left her on the side of the road, but later returned with a van to move her body. Pegram was bleeding from her head, so Bonilla taped a plastic bag around her head before loading her in the van to carry her to Harleyville, where her body was eventually discovered using Bonilla's cell phone location. Bonilla's ex testified in court that he was capable of being forceful. She said that they broke up when Bonilla was getting too pushy. Bonilla claimed that Pegram's death was nothing more than an accident. However, a jury found him guilty of murder and sentenced him to life in prison. Number 3. British backpacker. On the 9th of December 2018, law enforcement found a suspiciously placed suitcase in the Waitakere Ranges, 12 miles west of central Auckland. Inside was the lifeless body of a young female who had been visibly battered and bruised. The body was later identified as Grace Mullanes, a 22-year-old British woman and a recent graduate from the University of Lincoln. Mullane had arrived in New Zealand on November 20th. She had just spent the past 6 months in South America and would now be staying for 2 weeks in New Zealand. The British backpacker's family first became concerned over whereabouts when Mullane failed to respond to their birthday wishes on December 2nd. Police were notified and a missing persons report was launched. CCTV footage revealed Mullane walking into City Life Hotel in Auckland's Central District with an unidentified man on December 1st. The man was later identified as 27-year-old Jesse Kempson, someone Mullane had met on Tinder. The night she went missing was the night she went on her first date with Kempson. Kempson was immediately apprehended by the police, and he initially denied any liability whatsoever. He was taken into custody on December 8th in connection to Mullane's disappearance, but was later booked for her murder on December 10th. Once the body was discovered, Kempson's story changed, and he claimed that Mullane died as a result of rough, consensual sex. After a 3-week trial, a unanimous decision was reached by the jury, and Jesse Kempson was charged with the murder of Grace Mullane. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a possibility of parole in 17 years. Number 2. Bar date. In the midst of a messy custody battle with her estranged husband, Nicole White decided to ease her mind by meeting a man she had been speaking to online for a first date at a local bar. The Enumclaw, Washington native was a mother of 2, and friends suggested that she had been having a hard time in the months leading up to June of 2008. White had been speaking to Jonathan Daniel Harris via instant messages for some time, before the two finally decided to meet at Jeepers Country Bar and Grill in Spanaway, Pierce County. White picked up Harris from his residence. They went to the bar and then drove back to the Harris residence. Witness reports suggested nothing out of the ordinary while the two were at the bar. Investigation revealed that Harris had asked White if she wanted to go back to his place, and she agreed. Family members lodged a missing persons report after the mother of 2 did not return home the next morning. 2 weeks later, police dogs found White's body wrapped in a green tarp at the bottom of a wooded ravine south of Lake Kaposin. The medical examiner ruled she died from blunt force trauma. Her body was a mess. She had a fractured skull, several broken ribs, and several bruises. Police immediately booked Harris on suspicion of White's murder. He was ultimately charged with the offense when investigations revealed that he had traveled to where White's body was found. A sweatshirt was retrieved from his residence, which had White's blood all over it. The jig was up. Harris's attorney argued that Harris had a terrible and abusive childhood, and that he suffered from trauma. But lots of people have terrible childhoods and don't kill people. For the murder of Nicole White, Jonathan Daniel Harris was charged with 316 months in prison. Number 1. Hate crime. On the night of October 8th in 2006, Michael Sandy interacted with Anthony Fortunato in an online chat room. The 29-year-old had been working as a display worker at IKEA in Hicksville, New York. Fortunato was a 20-year-old man who was allegedly also from the area. Their chat soon turned sexual, and either one of the two men, or both of them, proposed the idea of a sexual encounter later that night. Fortunato stated that he would bring along his friend, John Fox, as well. The three planned a meeting at Plum Beach, a rest stop and popular cruising location on Belt Parkway in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. The whole ordeal took less than an hour to plan out. Sandy drove his 2004 Mazda to the meeting location, and Fortunato, Fox, along with Ilya Shurov, 20, and Gary Timmons, 17, arrived there shortly before Sandy. Upon arriving, Sandy was dragged out of his car by Shurov, who punched him in the face repeatedly. Sandy was then assaulted again by 3 of the 4 men, while the 4th scavenged through his vehicle and person to rob him. Witnesses allege that they saw the 2 white men beating up Sandy on October 8th. In the midst of the ordeal, the 4 men chanted racial and homophobic slurs at Sandy. The 29-year-old somehow managed to escape and made his way onto the highway. The disgruntled and battered Sandy was hit by a vehicle on the highway and died several days later at the hospital. During questioning after arrest, the suspects made statements indicating that they had used the internet to lure gay men in the past. The 4 men received various sentences, ranging from 17 to 21 years in prison. Thanks for watching. Have you ever had a blind date gone wrong? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!